Attention! Go! Go!
So we see the crew squeezing it away. Sydney Rowing Club here on the right of the shot. It was a squeeze to start with. It's power now getting put down, and they're pretty much neck and neck with the crew from Oslo to their left.
Yeah, Sydney got up to nearly 52 strokes a minute, being warned here to move over. It's so tough to manage that power into the water, particularly with such a high rating, clearly making the coxswain work really hard. That's in the Sydney boat. Kendall Brody really struggling to keep that boat straight, but it looks like they're out in front. Serious horsepower in that Sydney boat. Average weight 14 stone 7, so they're a stone a man heavier than the N.S.R. Oslo boat.
Yeah, and they're looking to get away early. Looking slightly short to me at the finish, not quite finishing the strokes out, not quite really rocking the bodies back. Perhaps that's something they do to keep the stroke rate high as the rate goes on, and as the race goes on and the rate comes down. I'd like to see them opening those backs out a bit further. It's working effectively, and at the moment they do seem to be managing to move on the Oslo crew, who also aren't quite opening back and really finishing their strokes out as we're coming up past the quarter mile. That's 400 metres into the race.
Well, the N.S.R. Oslo boat have started to stride out a little bit earlier than the Sydney crew here, so they've already dropped down to 38. Sydney was still up there at 42 strokes a minute, so clearly wanting to hold on to that higher rate of striking. But they're getting the length here. I'm quite impressed with Sydney's ability to hold the length whilst having such a high rate of striking. You can see the stroke man there, Hamish MacDonald, just absolutely bossing each stroke. They're not quite chaining, so for those that aren't familiar, when you look at the puddles that come off these oars, it's quite good to measure whether you get a nice chain of puddles as you go through each stroke. That just shows great distance per stroke, real length and power.
The coach used to ask us to try and be chaining. When you chain, you can look behind you and you see the puddles leaving the boat, and it looks like a chain left in the water. As we have a look at this Oslo crew, I like the way they look. I like the focus down the crew, and I'm wondering whether they can hang in against that power and aggression that we saw from the Sydney crew. As we hear the umpire really warning the Sydney crew. Sydney trying to get off their station. They're trying to get across, the arms going up for, oh, and the blades are clashing. This one could get very exciting. You don't often see a blade clash. Oh, the umpire's waved the red flag. He's stopping the race. Boris Rankov is stopping the race. Well, let's see. He's shouting the name of Sydney. He's waved the red flag. He's turning around. This is going to be quite interesting. He's shrugging his shoulders. An experienced umpire, Boris Rankov.
Gentlemen, the race is over. You can be disqualified.
So this is something we don't see very often at Henley. Boris had been warning the Sydney crew. He's waved that red flag, and I think he is saying that Sydney, the race is over, you are disqualified. The Sydney crew are not prepared to stop. They're still carrying on down the course.
Interesting, two very different race strategies there. You saw the N.S.R. Oslo, they just started to stride down to 36, so they're still going for it here. But as you say, Sydney disqualified now, so regardless, N.S.R. Oslo are going to move on.
So it'd be nice to see a replay. He had been warning them, so here we have a look at the replay. He's been warning Sydney right from the start. They're off their station. Now, Cox's hand goes up in the Oslo boat. There's then a clash of blades. That has to be the fault of the Sydney crew because they are off their station. They have been warned. Boris gets the red flag out and waves it. To me, that's a disqualification. He's made the decision. I'm sure the Sydney crew won't be happy with it, but I think it's probably hard to argue with. The crews don't believe him by the look of it. The crews are still racing here down through Forley. I'm interested to see whether Boris is going to actually get his flag out and tell them that they can stop and they can relax. You never want to stop in the race. I think if I was the Oslo crew, I'd quite like to know that I can now relax and recover, because we've got to have a pretty big race against St. Club Lucerne tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, this is heartbreak for Sydney, but I mean, you saw them immediately change direction. As soon as the red flag came out, the coxswain immediately put the rudder on. That should have happened a lot earlier. They should have been reacting to the warnings from the umpire if they weren't. I think you can start to see their rhythms have just started to slow down a bit there. I think it's settled into their minds that this race is over, and it will be N.S.R. Oslo proceeding to face the Z Club from Switzerland in the next round.
Well, the umpire's launch has dropped right back. You can see there from that shot, the umpire's launch isn't really on top of them. So he's not communicated to them again. He's waved the flag. He's told them the race is over. He's got a pretty stern look on his face. to say that this is not going to happen. And I suspect that when he comes down to us here at the finish, he will raise the red flag, which says that the race has not gone to plan. Normally they wave the white flag to say the race has gone to plan. He'll wave the red flag. He'll inform the crews and everyone else that this race is over. But obviously no one else knows. You see they've gone past the mile marker there. The person marking has still put up that it's a small lead to Sydney. The Sydney crew are still racing flat out. I think the Oslo crew are still racing flat out.
They're still absolutely going for it. I think they just want to put on a good demonstration, even though the race may be over. They've still got a few hundred meters of the Henley course to race, and there's nothing quite like racing it at pace. So clearly keen to do that, but nonetheless, N.S.R. Oslo, I'd have thought would be wanting to maintain as much energy as possible, but I
don't think N.S.R. I don't think either crew knows. To me, these crews are both still racing absolutely flat out. They don't know what's going on.
If that's genuinely the case, then we've got quite an exciting race, even though it's over already.
Even though
we've got
know
quite an exciting race.
We've still got a race here to keep you talking about. Sydney are going to be able to go home. They're going to say, we won, even though we were disqualified.
Yeah, this isn't resting pace. We've got N.S.R. Oslo still up there at 38 strokes a minute.
Well,
and Sydney still up there at nearly 40.
They're 38 and 40. The people most pleased about this will be St. Club Lucerne, who had to race the full 2,112 metres themselves to see that their opposition for tomorrow, which I'm sure is going to be Oslo from Norway, are also having to race a full 2,112 metres, albeit that they're going to cross the line behind the crew from Sydney.
And it's just amazing to see how far behind, as they cross the line here, how far behind the umpire's launch is.
So the
N.S.R. Oslo they're immediately protesting here. I think they ought to have known when they saw the red flag, which you're seeing Boris Renkov raise there to signify disqualification. They just need to be informed in these boats that that's what's happened.
So the graphic there has put up that Thames, in this heat of the Thames Cup, that Oslo have beaten Sydney Rowing Club, and it's going to be by disqualification.
Serious disappointment in that Sydney boat. Nonetheless, 3 cheers go up regardless. Best effort for good sportsmanship there. However, I think you can just see the disappointment there in the Sydney boat. They've understood that they've been disqualified.
Like to be disqualified.